Welcome back, Laura, to part two of our interview on workplace wellness strategies that work. Hello, everyone. My name is Lisa Kelly of Kelly Wellness Consulting, Inc., and founder of the Workplace Wellness Ambassador Program. So this is the part two of our interview series, Wellness Ambassadors at Work. And in part one of our two-part interview with Laura Putnam, Laura, you presented steps to infusing well-being and vitality into organizations from your new book, which I will show, Workplace Wellness That Works. So again, thank you, Laura, for returning for a second installment of our interview series. And it really is quite an honor and a privilege today to interview you again. And for those who may not have seen it, Laura and I did a first interview or presentation by Laura on her book and some strategies for infusing well-being and vitality into any organization. So again, Laura, for those who did not see our first interview, Laura is CEO of Motion Infusion and again, author of the book, Workplace Wellness That Works. And so in this interview segment, we're going to discuss additional strategies and some specific applications for creating healthy workplaces and thriving work cultures based on Laura's book research and her experience as a workplace wellness consultant. And Laura, I understand you've been in the industry for quite a few years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, I started Motion Infusion the beginning of 2008.
Excellent. So, and be sure to stay with us to the end of our discussion, as Laura will be sharing a special bonus offering for our audience today. So just a little bit further by way of introduction, Laura is CEO again of Motion Infusion. She is a speaker, trainer, and a consultant on well-being and human performance. She is author of Workplace Wellness That Works, published by Wiley. She is the chair of the American Heart Association's Greater Bay Area 2020 Task Force. She's also the recipient of the American Heart Association's 2020 Impact Award. And she's been featured on, or will be featured on, MSNBC, Business Insider, Investors Business Daily, and Globe and Mail, just to name a few. So Laura, let's begin. Of your 10 steps, and I'm going to bring up your book again because I love the cover of it actually. It's just very inviting, very engaging, and it's a phenomenal book. I am so thrilled. I chuckled because I had so many little Post-it notes and it looked too good, so I took them out. But I have it marked, I have it highlighted, and it's just action-packed. It's such a wonderful read for anyone who is involved heavily in workplace wellness or is in HR or just interested in how they can help create a healthier, more vital, energized, engaged workplace that they work in. So again, we're going to talk some more about your book. And so of your 10 steps to infusing well-being and vitality into an organization, which would you say are perhaps the top 3 steps to keep in mind?
Well, I'd say first and foremost that you really got to look at the culture. I mean, I think that one of the things that we've learned the hard way is that you can have the best laid workplace wellness program, but if you don't have a culture that supports it, it will never get off the ground. And I see this over and over again. One of my favorite examples of this was actually I was brought in by an organization and we started the initiative with some focus groups. And so through these focus groups, I was able to do some uncovering of the hidden factors and assess the culture a little bit better. And one of my favorite ways to do this is, and you can try it as well, but I wrote the company values on a piece of flip chart. And then without labeling them as the company values, I asked people in these focus groups, and this included managers and all levels. I said, what are these? And not one group was able to identify them as their company core values.
Really?
And of course, once I revealed it, I said, these are your core values. Especially the managers were like, oh yeah, I know that. But we know that if we look at a company like Zappos, for example, or a company like IDEO, where they're really living and breathing those values, that every single employee and even customers are likely to know what those core values are. And so a company that doesn't have this supportive culture it's really hard for a wellness program to take place. And then it starts to feel like a wellness program that's being done to you as an employee, as opposed to something that's really being done for you. And I'm just seeing so much, both anecdotally and also in terms of the media, around a lot of negative fallout from workplace wellness. And I think that a lot of that starts from the culture. So we have to first and foremost look at the culture. How can we build a culture that's more of a want-to culture so that people are more receptive to it? And probably the biggest issue is trust. And so there has to be a level of trust first, and we really have to work on building that first. So I would say that that's really a first place to start. And that you also want to think about really matching the cultures we talked about in our earlier session, that you have to make sure that the language that you use really resonates with the people that you're trying to reach. Right. So another example of this is actually Goldman Sachs. They have a mindfulness program that's really effective, and they have over 500 people each quarter signing up for it. And one of the things that they did, they were really smart, was rather than talking about stress management, and they knew that there was some stigma attached to that term, they instead recast it as building resilience and sharpening your competitive edge. That this was actually a way that you could actually become more competitive. And so again, they're really smart in thinking about matching the culture. So that's first and foremost, is to uncover those human factors. The second, I would say, is this piece about designing nudges and cues. I think that we've made the mistake of blaming the individual too much, if inadvertently blaming the individual and putting the burden of change on the individual. And the more we can make it about optimizing the culture and the environment so that we make it the normal choice and the healthy choice, I think the more likely people are to engage with it. And this is, again, we talked briefly about Dan Buettner's Blue Zones project. But this is the thing that he really found, was that it was less about individual choices and more about the culture and the environment that we're living in. And collectively, our larger environment and culture is Lisa, you know this, that all of us know that it's pretty unhealthy. And so where workplace wellness steps in is that each workplace really has an opportunity to be able to create an oasis of health and well-being, again, through these nudges and cues. And then finally, I think that we really need to think about imagining what's possible and move beyond health. And for those of us who are in the field, health is pretty motivating, but we forget that for most people, it's actually not. And what's more motivating, number one, are things that are front and center for us. So things like our bank statement is front and center for a lot of us, or childcare or elder care, or our relationships. Those are the kinds of things that really speak to people, are more immediate. But then beyond that, all of us really have a deep need for wanting to achieve a greater quality of life. And so we want to be talking about things like fully thriving, and rather than just this health stuff. And so we need to really think about how we can recast our wellness programs around these multiple dimensions of well-being. And just as we discussed earlier, Lisa, these include things like not only physical, but emotional, social, career, community, environmental, and creative. All of these are different aspects. And each company needs to think about what are the different dimensions that are likely to be most meaningful for the employees that they're trying to reach.
Right. So just to be clear, you're not, because I'm a nutritionist and a wellness consultant, obviously, on personal health and wellness. You're not saying that we should dispense totally with the whole health and wellness, or, the physical piece, right? That we just broaden our scope. Is that correct?
And that's exactly right.
Okay.
And also to show the cell, if you will, beyond health. So, for example, I talk a lot about getting moving, and not only going and working out, but staying active throughout the day, and looking for ways to infuse motion. And one of the things that I talk about is the fact that when we move, not only does it help us to be healthier, we know that, but it actually is one of the best ways to be happier and even smarter. There's just phenomenal research that's come out that shows that the benefits to the brain may be so great that the benefits to the body are really secondary. And so what we know is that people who are physically active, they cut their risks of developing dementia or Alzheimer's in half. And we also know that students who are physically active are academically outperform their less fit peers.
Right.
And it's actually one of the best ways to get creative. One of the things that movement does is it helps to foster connections between the left and the right side of the brain. It creates more synapses or connections between brain cells. And so we're able to engage in more whole brain thinking. So these are the kinds of things, the value propositions, if you will, that we need to be drawing that larger picture.
I love it. Excellent. Very well said. So moving on, in your book, you advocate the idea of going stealth with workplace wellness. Mm-hmm. Can you provide some examples, perhaps, of how a wellness or HR team might be stealth in their approach, and how such approaches might actually help foster healthy workplaces?
Yeah, this is something that I really discovered by accident. I was working with a medical department, and first we did a well-being series, a 6-part series. Mm-hmm. And this is really a series of lunch and learn. So it happened during lunchtime. It was all voluntary. Mm-hmm. And one of the biggest outcomes from it was the chief of the department said, I've never seen people so engaged with each other the way they were in these workshops.
Right.
So we've got some big issues here that we're struggling with. We're struggling with issues around engagement, teamwork, and absenteeism. And these are what he characterized as work performance issues. So no longer wellness issues. And he said, do you think maybe you could help us out with this? And so I, of course, said yes. And so we launched a year-long culture change initiative. And what was shocking about this was the amount of attention and resources that this work performance initiative got as opposed to the wellness initiative. So the reception for the wellness initiative was kind of a nice to have you reception, whereas the reception with the work performance initiative was we need you. And the budget went from $3,000 to $20,000.
Wow.
And the activities took place during work time and didn't take place during lunchtime. And so I was so curious about this. I did some research on this. And, we hear a lot of, the fact that workplace wellness now is a $6 billion, maybe as much as a $10 billion industry. We get a kind of a bad rap for that. Well, let's put some perspective to this, because if we look at the field of, say, learning and development, that's a $164 billion industry. Let me say that again, $164 billion industry. Mm-hmm. So why do we keep acting like Sisyphus, trying to push a rock up a hill and trying to push these wellness programs? Why don't we instead go where the money is, go where the companies are allocating their time and their resources, and really start to embed wellness into those? And I think that that's a really powerful way to really start to infuse it into the fabric. Mm-hmm. So if we're thinking about how we do this, again, some of the top opportunities are community outreach is a big one. There are a lot of companies that are putting a lot of resources and time toward community outreach. And community outreach in and of itself, that's well-being, that's community well-being. But I'll give you an example, and this is Salesforce. Mm. Their employees get up to 6 days a year on company time to go out and do community outreach. And in fact, they just hit the 1 million hour mark. 1 million hours of employees on work time, during work time, have been put toward community outreach. And so it's a really powerful way to embed wellness into that. Or another company is Square. And every Friday, they have a clean streets initiative where employees go out into their neighborhood and they just clean up the streets. And it's a great way to build community well-being as well as social well-being. They're interacting with each other. They're interacting with their neighbors. And it's also getting people up and out of their seats and moving. So it's physical well-being. Right. But I also think that leadership development and management training, we've been doing a ton of work with Schindler Elevator Corporation, for example. And we're now going into year 2 of this, and we get 2 days, full days with the top managers to conduct this leadership development program that embeds wellness and well-being concepts into it. And so year 1 was really focused on how can I as a leader invest in my personal well-being so I have the energy that I need to be an effective leader. And year 2 is really focused on how can I build a winning team? So how can I start to bring this to my teams? Right. And this has really sparked a movement within Schindler. So now it's been there, the guy who's the head of safety was like, oh, I want some of this wellness stuff. So we worked with the safety team and the top safety managers around embedding wellness and really showing them the connection between safety and wellness. And we know that there's some great research with the total worker health that's come out of NIOSH and CDC that shows the connection between safety and health. So there's so many ways that we can really make that connection, and we can go stealth. And that is the number one path that I'm personally pursuing now. And I think that that's really our top opportunity to really start to increase our impact.
And just if I may for a minute, it brings me back to mine years ago when I worked with a national telecom here in Canada. And I was charged at the time as to roll out a career management program. And also we brought in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And we brought it in under our Learning Center of Expertise and our learning initiatives. So I'm kind of musing to myself, I guess we were probably going stealth back in the day when we didn't
That's exactly right.
We were doing it, right?
Yep. That's exactly right. Yeah. And, in every team development program, there's opportunities for wellness. And again, I think that especially with some of the negative fallout that we've seen around wellness, some people really do have negative associations with wellness. And so we just have to be smarter about it and really look at ways that are going to work. And I firmly believe that this going stealth approach is likely to be more effective.
Right. Excellent. So moving on, we know that there is an increased race for talent today, especially in the IT sector.
Yeah.
Can you offer examples perhaps of how organizations might position themselves to attract top talent, particularly of the millennial generation? And again, it's not just germane to the IT sector, as we know. I think the race for talent is certainly probably a little more prominent in that sector, but it's in certain other sectors and maybe across the industries, it's becoming a challenge now to attract top talent. So again, I ask, how might companies better attract this talent through going stealth or through some type of workplace wellness movement or initiatives?
Well, to your point about millennials, millennials really do have a higher expectation that the companies that they work for are going to take care of them and they're going to make the world a better place. And so they really have this expectation that companies the companies that they're looking at, that they provide wellness, and not just wellness, but wellness that's done well. So this includes the perks. So for example, we really see it here in the Bay Area. For a lot of these startup companies and for a lot of these technology companies, things like a stand-up desk are just a standard issue. Right. And they understand that potential talent is looking for things like that, or things like serving healthy food on site is just a norm, and you cannot be competitive without that. Mm-hmm. But again, the piece about it has to be meaningful. And so having just what I like to call a check the box kind of wellness program, where you just have your health risk assessment and maybe a couple of meaningless programs, really aren't going to draw this talent. They want it to be something that's really meaningful and easy to use. And one of the things that's actually really exciting is seeing companies like Brocade, for example, that are really thinking about building wellness from the ground up. And so when they built their new site in San Jose, they were smart to poll their employees, and this is their new corporate headquarters before they built it, and they asked their employee base, what is it they really want? And they wanted wellness. And so what they did is they did things like they built extra wide stairs that are attractive and well lit to get people to use the stairs more. And they even have their cafeteria where the one whole wall is made out of glass, and that looks out onto an AstroTurf. So while you're sitting and enjoying lunch, you're looking out and watching people playing volleyball or playing soccer. And so again, it's kind of that nudge factor where it plants a seed. And so while you may not jump up from your lunch right at that moment and go and play, it plants a seed. So maybe you'll go back and do that with your kids when you come home from work. Or even things like, having an on-site fitness facility. We're really seeing that that's really become an expectation. And then really moving beyond that to look at things like mindfulness has become a huge initiative and expectation for a lot of these companies, and is a big draw. And really creating a more compassionate workplace in terms of both how does it treat its employees, also how does it treat its customers, how does it treat the world. So companies like Eileen Fisher are really setting new norms about how do we treat this world, how do we protect the environment, because interestingly enough, the second most polluting type of industry is actually the fashion industry, second to gas and oil. And so Eileen Fisher now is really, as a company, they're looking for ways to start to protect the environment. And they actually make a strong connection between wellness and sustainability and protecting the world and the earth. And so these are the kinds of things that talent is really looking for, and that for any company to be competitive, they need to be thinking about these.
Right. And I just come back to put a little promo for your book here on workplace wellness that works. But I've heard you speak on this at the WELCOA conference in San Diego, and also in your book, and also in one of your articles, and you refer to Patagonia. And I love that example. Can you just very quickly give us that, how you called and asked for it?
Yeah. So
I
was really interested in exploring more of this idea of the impact that culture has on wellness. And so Patagonia is a company, as we all know, that has a fabulous culture. And so I called them up and I said, hey, I want to, can I talk to your wellness person? Because I want to find out more about the connection, about how you guys leverage the culture there to build your wellness program. And the guy who picked up, he just started laughing. And he said, we don't have a wellness program. But I guess you can talk to our leadership guy, and that's probably the closest that we have. But what's so amazing is that wellness is so embedded in everything that they do. And it really started with the founder, who has this book and this idea, let my people go surfing. So surfing at lunchtime is a norm, or holding a meeting out on the beach is a norm, or training for your ultra marathon is a norm while you're at work. And they even have a saying that while the work can wait, the weather can't. So this is just something that's really part and parcel in everything that they do. And again, really goes beyond just physical wellness. I mean, one of the great programs they have is that you as an employee can take up to 2 months off and go work with the nonprofit of your choice. And again, it's this commitment to the world, making the world a better place. Right.
And I just also want to put in a plug for Starbucks. And when I was actually down at San Diego attending the WELCOA conference, I went in for my daily latte, and I asked the employee, I said, so is it true you can actually do a full degree? And he said, yeah, I just been taking part of it. And it was so exciting because you could just see the energy and the passion in his eyes.
Yeah, it's really exciting.
I was like, kudos to Starbucks. I think that's excellent.
Absolutely. And this is also a great example of investing in career well-being. And they know that that's really an important element to overall vitality. And that again is a great draw. They're really smart to do that. People want to work at Starbucks because of that.
And you talk about retention. I mean, that takes care of retention right there. I mean, who's going to leave a company that's going to pay them, to do a full degree. Okay, so let's move on. So thank you. I'm just so thrilled. I every time I connect with you, I learn more. What was your biggest takeaway or aha moment from doing the research for your book, would you say?
I think the thing that I've really been struggling with the most is this whole debate around incentives and penalties. I really have been a pretty strong voice against it. But I have to say, in conducting these interviews, I was actually really pleasantly surprised by the number of companies and organizations that actually do have incentives, and in some cases have really large incentives. But the workplace wellness that they have in place actually does seem to be working. So I think that this was an aha for me. I still strongly believe that we need to look for ways to move beyond incentives and penalties, particularly penalties, because we all know in cases like Penn State that it can really go awry. But it was kind of an interesting wake-up call for me around, wow, this is Iron Pipe Company. They have provide incentives up to $600 for each of their employees. And but what's really interesting is the larger culture. I mean, they have a culture that's really starting with their founder, John Egan, their first president, that this idea of really the golden rule and treating one another with respect. And so this was actually one of the first companies where ownership was bequeathed to the employees. And in fact, at the time, it wasn't even legal. And his wife had to testify on his behalf after after John Egan passed. So his widowed wife testified on his behalf. So I think that when you have incentives, but you have a company that obviously cares so much about their employees, perhaps it can work.
Excellent. So in conclusion then, for our viewers who may be independent wellness coaches and consultants, like some of our certified ambassadors, people like ourselves, what marketing or business advice can you perhaps lend to them to help them become successful or advance their careers in the wellness industry?
I would say first and foremost is to get out there and speak, is to share your voice. Mm-hmm. And that has been the number one way that I have grown Motion Infusion, is through speaking. Mm-hmm. So what does this mean? This means that you have to do really, really hard work, filling out RFPs to get into conferences. And I've had to work really, really hard at that. There's one conference, I actually applied to speak there 3 times and was rejected.
Oh,
thank you for
sharing that. Yeah, thank you for sharing.
Yeah, the third time that I was rejected, I actually called them and I actually asked for some feedback, if they could provide some feedback on how I might redo this so that I could get accepted next year. And I actually was put on the waiting list twice. And I said, this is the second year in a row that I've been put on the wait list. Can you give me some feedback here? And ultimately, actually, what happened was the organizer, he emailed back a couple of days and he said, oh my gosh, I didn't realize we put you on the waiting list 2 years in a row. That's actually a compliment. But who are you? That's kind of weird, because I just filled out a whole RFP. Who am I? Well, but anyway, long story short, I actually got accepted into that conference as a result of that. And so I think that we have to, not be afraid to raise our hand and just try to get into these things. And if we don't get in, then ask why and ask what we can do differently. Don't be afraid to do that.
I always say sometimes we just have to make ourselves a little more vulnerable.
Yeah.
And, face our demons. And
Absolutely. And I think also really leveraging organizations like the American Heart Association, they're always looking for volunteer speakers. And that has been a great way for me to get a lot of credibility and to really get out there. I've gotten into a lot of organizations through the American Heart Association. And again, it's an opportunity for me to both give back, so it's improving my community well-being. At the same time, I'm really getting some nice exposure. I think another thing to really think about is to get your branding together. To really think about how you can stand out. And this is something that people only take a few seconds and they either pay attention to you or you don't. And so your brand really matters. And the good news is that there actually are some options out there to develop your brand in a low cost way. And one of my favorites is actually a company called PrestoBox. So it's prestobox.com. And you can go on there on the site, again, prestobox.com, and you can actually get your brand for free. You go through this whole little brand genie matrix of questions, and it'll say, here's your brand. But you can actually get a logo and a brand guide for as low as $9. And but you can get the full suite, website, logo, business cards, brand guide, all for $98 and then $15 a month. So there's some really great options out there for us to be able to brand ourselves at a low cost. I think another thing for everybody to think about is to not be afraid to try things and be open to opportunities. So this whole go stealth thing that is so much a part of what I do, that happened by accident, and it was because I was open to that. And now that's really become in some ways a calling card for me. And this is something that people connect with me, this idea of going stealth. I have to tell you, some people, they hate it. They get really mad at me. They say, that's mean and that's kind of sneaking, you're trying to pull the wool over people's eyes or whatever. And I'm like, actually, that's not what I'm trying to do. And I explain it, but it's, I think that that's really a way to be able to find what's going to be the area that you really care about, and what might be a way to kind of establish your niche. And then finally, I think to really go outside of wellness. So instead of just speaking, for example, at wellness conferences, look for other types of conferences that you can speak at and other audiences that you can reach. So HR, of course, is a big one. So the Society for Human Resource Management is a great association to be connected with. Another one is the Association of Talent Development. So I spoke at their international conference and exposition
Mhm.
And that's actually how I got connected to Schindler, for example. So
Excellent.
it really opens a lot of opportunities and
Mhm.
provides
Yeah.
avenues that you might not think of.
And I don't know if you mentioned conferences. Again, it's one of the ways you and I connected was through the Walcoa conference in San Diego this past spring.
That's
And
exactly right.
you probably don't remember, I came up and introduced myself, but
I do remember, and and the other thing to add to that, Lisa, and this is what you've been doing such a good job of, and what I really believe is so important, increasingly important, is to increase your social media presence.
yeah.
And my fiance actually, he started a blog,
Mhm.
and he started writing about a very niche topic, and this exploded.
Oh, wow.
And he had 100,000 people coming onto his site every month and spending on average 10 minutes. So deep engagement.
Right.
And he had all kinds of regulators and bankers following him. And he's now been cited in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, and his investigative work in this blog actually ultimately led to a $14 million fine. The SEC took regulatory action against a company that he was profiling through
Mhm.
this blog. So social media can be a really, really powerful way to be an agent of change and also at the same time to build your business.
Right. Well, Laura, this has been a pure delight, and I'm so looking forward, and I'll share a little bit more about an upcoming engagement between us in just a minute. But again, thank you so much for participating in our two-part interview, and I wish you so much
Thank you,
success.
Lisa.
I wish you so much success from the bottom of my heart with your book and your future projects. And again, Laura's book, and don't go anywhere just yet. We have a little promo offer by Laura, but her book is Workplace Wellness That Works, and 10 Steps to Infuse Well-Being and Vitality into Any Organization. And Laura's book is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all major outlets. And again, if you bear with me just a second, I'm going to bring up my handy dandy PowerPoint. And there we go. Okay, so just one second here now. Okay, it's not wanting to come up. There we go. Okay. Alrighty, you have to love technology when it works. So again, just for those who may be interested in learning more about Motion Infusion, you can certainly go to her website at motioninfusion.com or by email laura@motioninfusion.com. And also that little promo offer. There you go. Laura, if you'd like to speak to your promotional offer.
Sure. So again, in celebration of the book that just came out in June, we are offering two options with bulk orders of the book. The first is a complimentary workshop up to 1 day with a bulk order of 250 books. And then the second option is a shorter up to 90 minutes talk or webinar with a bulk order of 100 books. And this is really customized to the needs of your organization. This can be an ideal training for, of course, workplace wellness professionals, but also for HR professionals, training and development professionals, or really anybody. And managers is a big one. We're doing a lot of work now with management training. There's a lot of evidence to suggest that managers really may be the most vital element to promoting health and well-being, especially with their teams. And so we provide that as well. So those are some options for those of you who are interested in learning more.
Thank you, Laura. And as I mentioned previously, Laura will be an upcoming presenter and presenting on how to design engaging lunch and learns in our October Workplace Wellness Ambassador certification programs. So if you're interested in learning from Laura and other industry experts, we certainly encourage you to consider signing up for our program. And you can learn more about it through our website, kellywc.com, or by emailing us at info@kellywc.com. And we will have our new brochure ready for release in just a few weeks. So with that, again, as I said, this is our new promotional image and brochure cover. And certainly I would just like to say as well that thank you again for joining us, both Laura and you, the viewer. And without our viewers and without our presenters such as Laura, we really we wouldn't have a show. So if you want to learn more about our Wellness Ambassadors at Work interviews, you can subscribe to our Kelly Wellness Consulting Inc. YouTube channel. So with that, I will bid everyone adieu, and until next time, stay healthy and well.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you again, Laura.